Scholars. I am Alex Alonso, and I'm here with FG, aka Frank Thornton. And how's it going?
Oh, pretty good, man. How you going today?
Hey, I got my son's graduating this week, so that's 2 down,
Okay.
1 more to go.
Yeah, my daughter graduated Thursday, man. So we did the whole shebang. And
How many?
1 more to go, man.
1 more to go.
Yep, next year.
So you got 1 minor left.
Yeah.
Okay, I got 1 also left. So you got 5 or 6 adult kids? 5 adult kids.
Yes.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay, man. Well, congratulations to another one down. We both got one to go.
1 more to go, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. This graduation season, seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, it was wild. And these schools, the numbers, the kids they have in them, man, it seemed like graduation took forever. But it was a proud moment.
Because of COVID, you think?
No, just, some of these schools, the newer schools, they make them so big now. They almost like little baby college campuses, so they can fit 4,000 or 5,000 kids on them,
Yeah.
So you have a graduating class of 8 to 1,100. That's a lot of kids.
But to keep it real, graduations are boring.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I dreaded going, but you got to go, and then you still proud that when it's over. But when you sitting there, you just like, come on.
They are so boring, and I'm putting them in the category with funerals and weddings.
Man.
Even though those are important gatherings that we have to do throughout our lives, those are the 3 most boring things to go to.
Nah, no doubt. They definitely boring. But
even though my kids are graduating, I tell them, man, you got me coming to this boring graduation.
Right.
But all right, man, let's get into it, man. We got I'm gonna save the fact check. Actually, one fact check, man, from episode 16, man. I'm not a big holiday person because I think the holidays in America, especially and throughout the world, have become commercialized.
Right, no doubt.
Not really about what they're supposed to be about.
It's about spending that money too, man.
That's all it is. Even Christmas. Christmas ain't got nothing to do with Jesus Christ. It ain't got nothing to do with the Bible. Ain't got nothing to do with Christianity. It's just some BS propaganda. So I don't really, and plus the word holiday, it comes from the word holy. These are supposed to be holy days. But, I don't know much about Memorial Day. But a brother hit me up and said Memorial Day was actually founded by freed slaves in Charleston. Mm-hmm. And it's rooted in Black America. Mm-hmm. And it's rooted in, our ugly past.
Right, no doubt.
The Civil War.
Exactly.
And you said last week that it was to commemorate
the
vets.
The dead veterans. Yeah.
Which you're partially right. But it's only dead veterans from the Civil War.
Okay.
Not all these other wars that we've been in.
Yeah.
Because the Civil War has been, it's the most bloodiest. It's the most, I would say it's the most gangster war that ever happened, because if you ever look at reenactments of them fighting war, they used to line up and just go head up.
Man, that was beef right there. That was serious. A lot of them hand-to-hand combat. You know how many dudes couldn't do that? You know what I mean?
And you know that some of us is about to die. We're on the line.
Right. We on the line.
Yeah, we're not all gonna go home.
And that's where the real term frontliners come on the front line. Some of the stuff they talk about nowadays. No, that was the real front line when you was in one of those, man. And it was broody and bloody, man.
That's like some real gangster way to fight a war. And what's crazy is that I've always looked at that style of fighting as ineffective. Like, y'all, both sides are setting each other up for failure. And I don't know who invented it, but one dude said, let's flank. Mm-hmm. Rather than go head up, let's blindside them. And someone invented the flank.
Right, somebody invented the flank.
And that kind of changed the way fighting. But now with the technology, helicopters, bombs, missiles, guns, rifles, nobody really gets close. There's no close combat anymore.
Yeah, they could shoot you from a Navy ship, 3 miles off the coast, man, so. But that was real shit though back then.
Yeah, so that's it's commemorating those dudes, man. Those dudes that fought, and I got to give a little bit of props to those guys who fought in that war, even though some of them were on the wrong side. They were on the slavery side. They were on the
keep slaves,
F black people side. But so fact check on that, man. Memorial Day is actually founded and rooted in our slave past, our shady past that America's always trying to brush under the rug. But update on YNW Melly, Young Nigga World Melly. His, we spoke about this before. His trial has been postponed, and his lawyer filed a motion. He wants to go to trial right now.
No doubt, but he's been in there since 2019, which me and you had already agreed that's not a long time. That's kind of the average time, 3-4 years that you could spend in there waiting for your murder trial. But I guess he just fed up. Like, man, filed a motion. You got 5 days to respond to this, and he trying to get it underway.
Yeah, but his trial was actually supposed to start in April. They were already had a date for jury selection.
Right.
Got postponed. There's all these motions they were filing. I think they wanted to introduce his tattoos. They wanted to introduce his lyrics. And that's part of the delay. But YNW said, man, let's go to trial and let's go right now.
Let's go right now, man. Yeah. He ready to get it over with.
Yeah, he seems pretty confident on that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll give it. We'll be on top of that case, because that's an interesting case, and that's the brother that is accused of killing 2 of his YNW label mates, and that should go underway very shortly. And then, last episode that we did, we spoke mostly about mass shootings, and I got a lot of response from it, and no one really seems to have an answer to this. But right. Everyone that speaks on it thinks they know. And I'm gonna be the first to admit that I don't believe any expert knows what to do. I don't know if more guns is the solution, less guns is the solution. I don't know if the Second Amendment is a big problem. I don't know if we need to get rid of the Second Amendment. I don't know if we should keep the Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody knows what to do.
Well, I'm going to say personally, I don't think guns are the problem. You know what I mean? Because they don't shoot themselves. It's people who get behind them and pull their trigger, and they call them assault rifles, and give them all kind of names. But at the end of the day, it's not an assault. It's a regular rifle until you assault somebody with it, So at the end of the day, man, I'm not sure, like you say, if removing guns is going to help. I don't think it was. When I was looking at some different surveys on the ban that Clinton put in place, it wasn't a large number difference between the ban and not having it banned. They didn't have a lot of research. Say it was only in place 10 years. They should have kept it in there longer and we would have saw results. I don't know.
Well, the 10-year ban from 1994 to 2004, some people are saying there was a drop in mass shootings, but it certainly didn't end mass shootings.
No doubt, but then when you go look at what they're saying the drop was, it wasn't much.
Yeah, it wasn't much at all, but hey, okay, so here's a question. Is the goal to end mass shootings or to reduce mass shootings? If we have 50% less mass shootings, is that a success? Are we going to be happy? Or is this just a never-ending argument and debate about guns?
Well, this is also, I don't see, the thing about me is when I look at mass shootings, I don't always, I kind of separate the gun part, even though you have to have a gun to do a mass shoot. But at the same time, I still believe that what happened is people figured out a way to infiltrate America, and this the route that they're going. Sort of like when we was fighting against the Taliban and them, and they were starting to try to bomb things over here, subway stations and small things, but they keep trying to figure out a way to get us, you know what I mean? So with this situation is inside our own country. So I think people are taking it into their hand like this will be effective, here in America because they can't stop it. So I don't know what the thought process is, but like you said, I'm with you. I don't think it's a solution.
I'm also a little offended that we have this whole conversation about guns when there's a mass shooting, but in our own streets where we live, where we grew up, we could have 10 murders in 2 weeks. Just because you got 10 murders in one instant, are those lives more important than the 10 that are going to die in LA over the next couple of weeks?
No, not at all. But at the same time, you're talking about banning guns that people go to the store and buy. The murders is happening out here on the street. These people aren't going to the store and buying. Then every now and then I keep hearing about, a train got broken too that was parked out somewhere. It just so happened a train with ammunition with guns was parked somewhere, and they knew the right train to break into and the right. I don't buy it, man. I believe some of this stuff is aided and abetted.
It is. I used to think that I've heard the same story that there were trains on cargo train guns on cargo trains that just stopped in the hood, and I was able to find that happened twice. One of the trains on a cargo train stopped over in the 60s area back in the mid 70s, and apparently there were toys and guns, toys on one train, guns on another one, and the dudes from that area broke in there and stole everything.
No doubt.
Then another one on the east side, I believe it was in Watts.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Around the same time. So this is real. These are real things that have happened here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, but it's one that happened later than that, man. I mean, you know, when you're a hood dude, they come through the hood, you know. And I remember they coming through the hood in styrofoam boxes. You know, assault rifles, what they call them, styrofoam boxes with the water bottles, with the strap that, you know, where do you get, you know, somebody pull up and sell, you know, they got 10, you know, Mag 90s in a styrofoam, you know, fresh off the store, you know what I mean? And it didn't dawn on me then because I was young.
Yeah.
It dawned on me now, man, that these things I believe are setups, man, that they you know, they putting these guns out here. You know, I ain't gonna say who, but they putting these guns out here on these streets. So even with the ban.
Hey, I believe that if we didn't even have guns, eventually we would still have the same amount of homicides. And the reason why I say that is because I look at, for example, in LA, 70% of all our homicides are gun related. So that means 30% of the people that are dying by blunt force trauma, strangulation, knife, other weapons. That's 30%. That's a large chunk of people.
Yeah.
So my theory is that if we got rid of guns, that 30% will eventually become 35%,
right.
40%. And within a decade or so, most of our homicides will be blunt force trauma,
No doubt.
knives, other weapons, strangulation. So I think the gun does make it easier to kill someone. But if you got rid of guns, people will find other ways to kill.
They'll find other ways to kill, but they definitely couldn't pull off a mass killing, you know, like the guns are doing. But I mean, come on, man, if you do away with guns, I mean, this world could just turn into a whole chaotic, you know, episode, you know. So I don't know if even getting rid of guns is even anywhere near the solution.
Well, yeah, I don't think that we can even go there because of the Second Amendment, and there's some strong protectors of the Second Amendment.
No doubt, they got that thing protected.
They don't care they don't care if 60 white girls, blonde hair, blue-eyed 6-year-olds got killed in a school.
Yeah, they gonna keep rolling,
Yeah,
man.
because Sandy Hook was really probably for America, you know, white America, that was like the biggest shooting that impacted white America because those were little white kids in a white area, and nothing happened after Sandy Hook. So if nothing's gonna happen after Sandy Hook, trust me, people, nothing is ever gonna happen.
It's gonna happen, man.
And I think Sandy Hook was 30 kids.
It was quite a few, man.
Yeah,
quite a few.
All right, well, maybe Biden will renew Clinton's 10-year ban on assault rifles. We're not 100% convinced that that's the solution, but hey, there might be a slight reduction in mass shootings. But all right, Judith Huff, she's the one accusing Bill Cosby of some sort of sexual assault, 1974, 1975. She's testifying this week.
Okay.
So that trial is
I know
underway.
that trial was underway. Yeah.
So we'll find out if she's, and this is a civil case. Let me remind people, it's not a criminal case.
Right. It's about the money.
It's all about the money. Yeah. So we're going to find out if she gets any money. And usually in civil cases, the person who is the plaintiff, the defendant, usually pays the person off.
Usually throw it on out there to get the negative publicity to just go on here.
And it's not about innocence or guilt. It's just about you're going to spend more money defending it rather than just paying the person off.
Right.
But for whatever reason, Bill said, hey, let's take it to trial.
Right.
So he must feel good about it. And our last update is Young Thug was denied bail.
Yeah, man, I heard about that, man. But you know, them guys got, like we talked about, it's a lot of people on that case, Alex. And believing dudes are starting to roll over, you know what I mean? Not to mention, you know, they had a cell phone on the inside.
Oh, I heard about that. Tell me about that cell phone.
Police put the cell phone in there, man, and they in there talking on the phone, talk about actually murder and talking about trying to hit somebody on the inside that's giving a little gang a problem. So, you know, they got so much evidence on these dudes. You know, they even talked about flying a drone over the fence with more phones and, you know, so they got all that conversation and, you know, and don't forget when you get to talking about murder, you know, that's big. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, if he's got a good lawyer, they can file some sort of motions to suppress the evidence that the cell phone gathered. because that's kind of revolutionary. That's kind of new. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, it is. And they said it was new, and they got it from somewhere that they seen someone else do it before. Now the thing about it is what they do sometimes is they'll play it in court not for the jury, but the judge will get to hear it, and it still gives you psychologically, intel on, how you really feel on the inside,
Well, at the end of the day, it only matters if the jury hears it.
No, you're absolutely right about that.
There's a good chance that jury never hears those calls, those conversations, but as the public, we have access to everything.
Right.
And it doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good for Young Thug. Well, let me play a clip of what Judge, and Young Thug has a black judge. His name is Ural Glanville, and this is what he had to say at the bail hearing the other day.
A trial court may release a person on bail if the court finds the following. So I have to look at the first thing, if Coleman directs me to look at, is consideration of whether or not the foremost consideration is, will he, if freed, appear at trial, and then the lesser factors, and these are: a court may release a person on bail if the court finds 1, poses no significant risk of fleeing from the jurisdiction or failing to appear in the court when required. 2, poses no significant threat or danger to any person, to the community, or property in the community. 3, poses no significant risk of committing any felony pending trial, and poses no significant risk of intimidating witnesses or otherwise obstructing the administration of justice. And I'm required to explain any reasons if I deny bond to assist the appellate court.
Let me stop there. If I deny bond, you
Right,
already
right,
know he's
you
about to
already-
deny it.
Yeah.
So he kind of threw that out there. So he's just covering his bases. Let me continue.
In its review, and that the granting or denial of bond will not be set aside unless there's a manifest and flagrant abuse of discretion. That's Jernigan versus the state, 111 Georgia 307, pinpoint 308. Very old case from 1903. Now, in regards to considering bond for Mr. Williams, I have considered. The first consideration is, if free, will he appear at trial, and to a lesser extent, the other factors. And based upon the court's consideration of the proffer, the two things that the court has significant concerns about are him being a danger to the community and flight. And I'll state for the purposes of the record and purposes of my decision that I realize that Mr. Williams is presumed innocent. I realize that he has the presumption of innocence stays with him until the state, by sufficient evidence, is able to prove to a jury's satisfaction beyond a reasonable doubt, I should say, that he is guilty of the offense or offenses charged. But however, in this particular circumstance, there has been significant proffers about Mr. Williams as being a danger to the community. In particular, the state's proffer that they have taken proffers from other gang members and people who are in this particular indictment and they're not in this indictment, that he is the leader of the gang, he is dangerous, and if he crosses them, he'll kill them or their families. And the predicate or the...
And then eventually he just denies bail.
Damn.
But the two issues that he's concerned about is flight and him being a danger. And he basically said that he feels like Young Thug will start killing motherfuckers.
Hell yeah, that's what he said. You know what I mean? And he called him the leader of the gang. That's going to stick. That's going to carry some weight, And,
It sounds like there's some informants because the judge said that they received proffers from people that are named in the indictment and that people that are not named in the indictment.
No doubt.
So people who are named in the indictment, he basically said someone's telling.
Hell yeah, they are.
So, all right, man, let's get to our first topic, man. Hey, we talked about We talked about rats, snitches, and informants on an episode about, 14 again. And we talked about T.I. And do you remember what your conclusion was with the T.I. case?
Yeah, my conclusion was after the Wheat Tips commercial that he did, I was pretty much done with him. But I did kind of give him a pass on when he got on the stand and spoke on the situation of when their van was shot up. You know, I did say that he didn't, I mean, anytime you corroborate, something, you tell him. But at the same time, I said that I gave him a pass based on he never named any names and he never, gave him any information to convict somebody, to be honest with you. The way I looked at it was the guy's brother actually did the telling. So when T.I. got up there, I don't believe if the brother wasn't there, this case would have never went anywhere with what T.I. said on the stand. So that's how I looked at it.
Yeah, I gave him so basically on the Fed case, he was a little shaky for you.
No doubt, I wasn't feeling that at all. I just didn't have the paperwork to just say this dude flat out just told. But the Wheat Tips commercial for me, I stopped. I left him alone after that. So I guess after that came the trial with he got on the stand for the
state case in Ohio.
The state case in Ohio. I was already pretty much done with him, but I did say that what he said, I listened to the testimony, what he said, he never pointed out a person. He never, gave a license plate. He basically gave standard information. And so I had gave him a pass, but at the end of the day, we all know that if you corroborate anything, you know what I mean? So, and I'm sure that, other people may have different opinions, but
yeah, definitely. Spider Loke actually tapped in with me and he said that we were too soft on T.I. And he believes that it is classic snitching, and I want to tap in with him so he could so that he could tell his side of what it was, because I on the state case I gave him a pass. I gave him a pass on both because the weed tip thing, I know that's a condition of his probation with the feds. And it's just words, it's a commercial that includes words. So I didn't really trip too hard on him. But he actually did testify in that state case against, I think, Hosea Williams. And he just kept it vague and simple. But for Spider, that was a little bit too much. And let me see if I can get him on the line right now.
Was it Hosea Williams or Hosea Thomas?
Probably Hosea Thomas. Let's see. Spider's been on this case since the beginning.
Oh, okay. Spider been on his helmet.
Yeah. Oh man. Let's see if he answers. We're tapping in with Spider Loke from East Coast. He's been on T.I.'s head for some years now, and he was a little disappointed that we kind of gave him a pass.
Please leave your message.
All right, so he didn't answer. We'll try him. We'll try him again a little bit later. What we'll do now is we'll move on to this other story, man, which is crazy, out of Indianapolis, Indiana. And it was a woman, 26-year-old woman, that caught her dude allegedly cheating because he was at a restaurant with another woman. And she went off on him in the restaurant. I think she tried to attack the girl with a bottle.
Right.
The manager of the store kicked them all out. And then at some point, he runs her over. I'm sorry, she runs him over with her car. And she runs him over 3 times, hits him forward, reverses the car on him, hits him again, then goes forward, and he dies. And now she's charged with murder, man. This is crazy, huh?
Man, that's nuts, man.
I know. Sometimes and let me also add that she was tracking him with some new Apple technology. It's not the regular Apple phone. It was another thing that
Life 360 or something.
Yeah, you could just put it anywhere you want, like in their car, in their purse.
Oh, okay.
And then you can track them. But it doesn't really matter how she tracked them. She tracked them, and and she killed him. She tracked him and she killed him.
Hey, that's a hunter. She hunted him down, man. But at the same time, it's sad to say that she let her emotions, get that tied up. Now, I'm gonna be the first to say I probably could call 2 or 3 ex-girlfriends right now, and they'll tell you, Alex, I wish I would have drove over his ass in the car, and.
But sometimes that's just a figure of speech.
No, I had some that probably if I wasn't who I was, probably would have damn near tried it, man. I mean, I had some wild relationships in my lifetime, and coming up, first thing we say, oh man, that girl crazy. Oh man, that girl crazy. And we use just as a term, But as you get older and as you start thinking and as you start seeing, mental illness and different things, man, you wonder how really crazy some of these females and guys work over these relationships. Cause I know some dudes that'll kill you in the streets, but they was soft as cotton at the pad, getting abused at home. You know what I mean? So that situation right there, man, Alex, I really think it happens more than maybe the person don't die, but I know people getting shot and people getting stabbed, and they going back even to the relationship after that.
Well, of course, the court system is going to treat her as being completely responsible for what happened to, I believe his name is Andre Smith. I got her name here. I'll get her name in a second. But she's been charged with first-degree murder, and I know at the end of the day she's not going to be found guilty of first degree because she didn't have the intent to go there and kill this man unless they can prove she walked out the door, when she left
the house, she knew what her motives was. But
she didn't know he was cheating until she got to, well, we don't even know if it's cheating, really, technically.
Well, she knew he was doing something in order to even track him and go to the situation. See all that bullshit that you used to say and used to get away with, they not going to get away with that no more. Because if you send one text, girl, I got his ass, girl, to your home girl, you do any of that, they finna pull up all those files. You made one phone call and say, I'm finna go, Now, what the argument could be is I didn't intentionally go there to kill him, But when you went backward and forward and backward, oh man, it's I believe she gonna get it. I believe they gonna make an example out of her, man, because it was just cold. It really was just cold hard murder, even if it was cheating. All
right, let me play this short 2-minute clip of a news story in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Intentionally drove over a man on the north side. Fox 59's Jesse Wells explains the motive for that violence.
Police believe the death here in this parking lot was domestic related. That's why the domestic violence awareness advocate for the city hopes the case sends an important message to anyone involved in an unhealthy relationship. Just after midnight, police were called to this parking lot outside Tilly's Pub on 82nd Street, where emergency crews found a 26-year-old man dead underneath a car. That victim was identified as Andre Smith, who leaves behind a young child and a grieving family. Court records claim the suspect, 26-year-old Gaylyn Morris, told witnesses she believed Smith was cheating on her with another woman and tracked him to the pub using GPS, where she ran over him 3 times in the parking lot before being arrested for murder.
We don't want to continue to be on the news talking about death when it could have been prevented.
Daniette Smith, the director of Indy's Domestic Violence Prevention Program, says while domestic violence calls to IMPD over the first few months of 2022 have gone down compared to the end of 2021, there has been one noticeable increase.
And we are noticing that there are more calls to IMPD coming from males in reference to, females being the suspect. So we want to make sure that everyone knows that domestic violence doesn't discriminate.
And while Andre Smith's family was too emotional to talk about the death on camera, Daniette reminds everyone that resources and advocates are available to help prevent domestic violence before it turns deadly.
When we see cases like this, we hope to spread the message of getting the resources needed for domestic violence, but also when there's domestic violence in a relationship, to reach out.
Ultimately, it will be up to the prosecutor's office to file formal charges in the case. In the meantime, the suspect remains behind bars without bond at the Marion County Jail.
All right, man. Gaylyn Morris, 26 years old. She has been charged with first-degree murder.
26 years old, man. Hey, those emotions, But I think somewhere, though, this is the thing about it. In these domestic situations, it got to be a point to where one of the partners know that the other one could possibly take it too far sometime. I believe before she ran him over, it could have been a whole long list of fightings, throwing a glass at him, throwing a bottle at him having to slap her. You know what I mean? It could have led, I'm sure, it led up to it. But at the end of the day, where do they walk away, Alex? Where do they say enough is enough? Because I can go find somebody that's going to be nice and sweet and soft to me, opposed to this violent, Now, like I said, I've been in relationships with, 19, 20 years old where the female was wild, wanted to fight and, got a kick out of all that. But at the end of the day, where do you say, hold on, enough is enough,
Yeah, actually, we can't ignore that point you just said. Some women actually enjoy the drama and the toxicity in a relationship.
True.
And I've actually had women tell me back in the day when I was in my 20s that like 3 or 4 days after an argument, I like the way you handled me.
Yeah.
I like the way you went off. And I'm like, well, I didn't enjoy doing that. Right. And I think that for some women who have low self-esteem, it makes them think that they're loved.
Right.
That someone cares about them, someone wants them. And that's really a crazy way to view acceptance and love by a way a dude goes off on you.
No doubt, because I've used it in trial situations where where I've told a female, I go off over you, girl. You know what I mean? And you just see the smile, like what I mean, like he'll kill over me, and you know what I mean. And there's something about him that you like, damn, you know what I mean, like. At the moment, we gonna tell them what, back then, tell them what they want to hear. Everybody out for what they were trying to do. But at the same time, I had a couple wild ones, man. You never had a female never try to hit you with a car or anything?
Not with a car.
Yeah.
The craziest thing maybe just regular tussling, wrestling and fighting, but nothing.
Right. Now I had a female tell me, if you didn't keep a pistol all the time, and I'll bust you in your head while you sleep. You know what I mean? And she meant it.
So that means you got to be nervous sometimes when you going to sleep around. Well,
the
people.
thing about it is you as at a point, I wish your ass. You know what I mean? Because I guess I was half crazy with her ass. To be honest with you, I can't put everything off on her. I'm half crazy with you if I'm, sticking around after you made those comments or something. And but that's too far right there, and we grew up in a time where a little tussle with your girlfriend wasn't nothing. Laws change, situations change, and it got to a point to where you just really got to walk away. It ain't even no shaking, ain't no choking, ain't no none of that stuff. That not that it was cool, just that people did, coming up. But now, man, you just got to get out. You got to walk away, Alex.
No doubt, you got to walk away, but most of us in our 20s, that's hard to do.
No doubt. That's why I say you got to go back to the 20s. You can't, us as grown men, we have a good understanding, but like I said, I could dial a few numbers right now or, get some numbers and call them. And I believe they'll say like, Alex, that dude was a damn fool,
Yeah.
But I guess we both were at that age,
Hey, when I was growing up, my dad used to tell me the only domestic violence that you can do as a man is if you close fist hit a woman.
Man.
Everything else is not domestic violence. But that you see, my mom actually worked in a shelter, in a domestic violence shelter for women for battered women.
Mm-hmm.
And one time, my mom heard me talking to my wife, and it was just me talking regular about something I didn't like.
Right.
My mom pulled me over to the side and she said, that's domestic violence. I was like, what do you mean domestic violence? I was putting her in her place for something she shouldn't have did.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, that's still domestic violence. So my mom handed me this little tiny book on domestic violence. And pretty much this is what the book taught me, and I'm not sure if I agree with this, and I'd like to get your opinion, but any level of aggression from a man to a woman, non-physical, can be defined as domestic violence.
I'm not gonna go for that one, which I mean, hey, they can word it the way they want, but at the end of the day, if I ain't whooping your ass, slapping you all upside your head, if I verbally say what I'm gonna say, that's just, to me, it's gonna get said, and it can go both ways, because nowadays it's a lot of men getting domestic violence happening on their end, and I know some men is like really be getting like abused, you know what I mean, and it's crazy, but at the same time, it does happen. Females have gotten more aggressive, you know what I mean? Females have their own pistols that they packing now, a lot of them live alone. And so, but no, I won't buy the verbal, but
A lot of domestic violence advocates will disagree with you, and they'll be very upset that you're not putting the verbal in that category.
Then that'll just be, or I'll take on that argument.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I'll take on that argument.
I think there are certain levels of verbal that do cross over. Like when you yelling and screaming, okay, I can understand that. But when you're stern and you pulling someone to the side and you're like, hey, this is what it is. Someone such as my mom puts all of that in domestic violence.
No, and I'm not knocking their views, but don't knock mine either. You know what I mean? And I'll sit there and argue with them all day long. I'll tell them pull up a chair. You're not going to tell me that I'm violently, treating somebody a certain way because of a tone that I use or a way that I get at them. Me, I'm not a yeller or a screamer, anyway. But for the dude who is yelling and screaming, I just believe if he's not putting his hands on her, then it's not domestic violence, So that's one of the problems. You're gonna try to tell me how to be now you're trying to tell me how to be a man. Now you're trying to tell me how to run my ship. Now you're trying to tell me that because sometimes that stern voice, even with children, changes the perspective, and gets things done, So at the end of the day, while you sitting there trying to, so what I'm just gonna do, stand there, please, honey, could you cook sometimes, no, you gonna cook or, we gonna have an issue. And whether the issue be me leaving or you leaving, but, and I don't believe none of that type of stuff is domestic violence, rather.
Yeah, I would say that's an old school perspective. And I agree with that partially. I do think that there is a certain level of a verbal exchange that does cross over into it. I disagree that what my mom pulled me over for that day when she pulled me to the side and called it domestic violence, I disagreed with it. And then the book that she gave me, I disagreed with most of that book, but because it includes everything. But their argument is this: a little bit leads to a little bit more, leads to higher arguing, louder arguing, pushing, shoving, punching, and then killing. Like there's a trajectory.
Right.
There's a continuum that starts small that could end up in murder. And so they say, hey, don't do any of this domestic, quote unquote, domestic violence.
Right, but I'm sure you done seen couples, man, been arguing for years. They ain't never laid a finger on it. They talking to each other bad, man. But, they've been together 40, 50 years and, and they go home and it ain't no problem, Sometimes, though, it's more or less like what I'm starting to see is when you have a situation where one of the parties in a relationship is, what's the term I'm used? It's not weak-minded. It's just a person that's non-aggressive at all, So the other person take advantage of their not being non-aggressive and they use it against them. I don't like that sort of situation, even though it does happen. I guess it's different levels,
Now, what's interesting is that women, for the most part, are usually given a pass or are not as treated the same as men when it comes to domestic violence, because it's always like, oh, if the woman did it, then it's the man's fault. He must have.
Right.
It's his fault.
He did something, he triggered something,
But when the man does it, it's always the man's fault.
Oh, no doubt.
But we are seeing women get arrested more. I don't know if women are committing domestic violence more now. Maybe the conversation is getting big. But let me tell you this crazy story. The first time I ever seen violence with my own eyeballs, it was a woman putting hands on a guy.
Damn.
I was 9 years old, and I was in the courtyard of the apartment buildings, basically like projects we lived in. And I looked over and saw a woman and a man arguing. And while they were arguing, they were walking and arguing. The woman was in front. The man was following, and they were just arguing. I turned around. I'm like, oh, shoot, they're fighting. They're arguing. And then at some point, the woman had an iron in her hand, and she turned around and, boom, hit the dude with the iron and knocked him cold out. Man. So my first time ever seeing violence was actually a woman laying a man out. Isn't that crazy?
Well, my dad, he was a good guy, out of Kansas City, Missouri. I mean, great dude. Wasn't a gun owner, didn't believe in guns. My mother was, grew up in South Central LA. She had pistols, and I never forget, they had the neighbors call the police when we lived in Los Angeles. The neighbors called the LAPD, and my mother told this story like over and over. That's how I have remembered as well. So the LAPD came and immediately they went to him. Mr. Thornton, how do you feel about fighting on your wife. Yeah, hey man, she beat me up. My mama said he told the police started laughing. It wasn't really no physical altercation, but they was arguing so loud. And the police just laughed, man. They said, and back then they seen everything was all right. They was out of there. Now, I've seen it with my own eyes. The woman goes to jail now. You can call the police now and say that she hit me, and they'll take her to jail. Or if they pull up now and they see that two people has been fighting, they taking both of them to jail now.
I think you have to have markings or bruises or injuries. Yeah,
that's why I say if they can tell, you guys been fighting, there's only one way to tell. It got to be some kind of markings or something like that. But they are taking women to jail now for domestic violence if you hit him as well.
I think men are getting smarter. They're punching their women in the gut now.
Well, I mean, that's what they. That was the whole thing about it, man. Rib shot a day, keep the peace around the way, but
avoid those blood shots,
man.
Bruises.
Yeah, you got to go to work, and all that type of stuff. But we gonna take some flack on that one.
You know what? We shouldn't be joking about this. But hey, Chris Rock has a joke about this. He says, "I ain't never hit my girl. I ain't never punched her, but I shook the shit out of her before." So, I mean, we got to sometimes joke about it. But this is not serious, though, because in this situation, Andre Smith, he leaves behind a kid.
Yeah, he did, man.
And his family is going to be grieving. And we're almost 100%, well, I should say, if I'm going to use the word almost, 99.9% certain that Andre Smith and Gaylyn Morris have had problems before this night.
No doubt. This ain't no one and done. It's not a first time event. She was obviously fed up with his shit, but at the same time, leave.
But what is his shit?
It might not even be leave. It might be your house. Put him out.
Well, how about this? What if they already broke up and the media don't have it right? What if they had already broke up? Because I've seen this a couple times where the breakup already happens, but there's still these lingering issues after the breakup that could lead to domestic violence.
Oh, no doubt.
So I don't think we have the whole story here, and I don't believe that cheating should be a death sentence.
Neither way, though. You know what I mean? Not for the woman, not for the man. I don't believe cheating. Me personally, I don't believe cheating should lead to no kind of domestic violence, period. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, you may have a broke heart. You may go cry. You may shed some tears. It may hurt. At the end of the day, you have a decision to make. Leave or stay. That's your decision, Alex. Leave or stay. And some people don't want to deal with the pain, or it ain't even the pain sometimes. Sometimes a guy or a woman cannot want the next person, but they don't want nobody else to have them. You know what I mean? So they treat them like shit, but yet and still they don't want them to go out and, be in a successful relationship. I know I'm saying this older because, but I know 20-some-year-olds, hotheads, and, you do something to them, they going to do something back. So, I'm just hoping that they really get, because they're not playing with these DVs no more.
Now, the last thing I want to ask about this before we move on is, what role does mental illness play in this? Because sometimes some people are not balanced mentally for a relationship. They're not correctly balanced, and they're triggered by some of the smallest things. And in some instances, mental illness has to come into play.
It comes into play, but the thing about it is we take it for granted. You know what I mean? I think we play with it like it's not that serious, and when people use the term, hey, you drove her crazy, in a statement, sometimes, or drove him crazy in a statement. In real life, Alex, sometimes that could be true just based on their mental stability wasn't already 100% anyway. So the first time she got a butcher knife and you woke up and she was standing over you looking at you with it, you should have started getting some red flags that, hey, you know what I mean? Instead of smiling at her, come here, girl, put that knife down, give me a kiss. You know what I mean? You got to take some of this shit serious, and I think what people aren't doing is taking it serious, and then they find themselves in a situation that they wish they wouldn't be in.
Well, the technology that this girl, Gaylyn Morris, used is called Apple AirTag. I'm not familiar with this device.
Me neither, yeah.
But blame Apple.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Well, the thing about it is they have so many devices now. It's really a shame, man. I wonder how many dudes are putting these on their girl. Cause I know people personally that told me their boyfriend or put a device on their card, you know, or on their phone, you know, and it's sad, man. You know, it's what are you going to do when you find out? Are you going to leave? See, and that's the problem. Sometimes people find out and then don't leave. So what would you put all the effort in for?
Yeah, not to kill,
right?
To make a decision.
What I mean? You know, to make a decision. You know, and just this my thing. At the end of the day, your life isn't worth my life at this point in my life. You know, I'm not finna kill you and go do the rest of my life in jail. That don't add up to me. You know what I mean? So,
well, you remember Michael Strahan, the football player?
Yeah, definitely.
He was tracking Nicole Murphy, Eddie Murphy's wife.
Wow.
They
they were dating, yeah.
And he ended up breaking up with her, so he must have found out something he didn't like.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, this is where I feel like, you know, if you got to track them, you already know something ain't right. If you feel you have to, you already might feel something ain't right. You know what I mean? And Alex, for me, if I feel something ain't right, you know, I use my gut instincts a lot. If I feel something ain't right, you know, I'm going to either address it, you know, but I'm not finna, man, I don't go through phones. It's just certain stuff I don't do. Yeah. You know what I mean? You know, and but people do.
But when you confront someone, you're not going to get the truth.
You're not going to get the truth, but at the same time, you know, you will get an answer. And sometimes, you know, within those answers can be some underlying ideas or underlying issues that you can point out and be like, you know, I got to keep an eye on this. But I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, man, it's a crazy situation in Indianapolis. What made this so crazy is she ran the dude over 3 times. Gaylyn Morris has been charged with murder. Andre Smith is arrested. He has a kid and his family is grieving, and it's just a tragedy, man. And we'll find out what happens to Gaylyn Morris, man. And let's get on to our last subject, because I don't know if Spider's going to tap in. Our last subject, I think this one's crazy too. A 49-year-old correctional captain from Rikers Island in New York City decided to go get a BBL, Brazilian butt lift. Mm-hmm. She went to the Dominican Republic. She went to a doctor who she knew had a bad record. And she suffered a stroke and died at the age of 49. And this to me, this brings up so many questions. The first is, if you're already 49 and you're married, you have a husband, and let me also add, it wasn't the husband's idea.
Right.
He said, I was good with her, how she looked.
Right.
This was what she wanted to do. At 40, at what age do you just say, hey, I'm just going to just be me?
You know what? By me having a lot of female friends and stuff like that, some of the stuff that come out their mouth, Alex, is crazy. I don't even have the heart to do them like I used to do them. I just used to be like, that's some dumbass shit. Is that, you know what I mean? I don't do them like that no more. I started trying to take a listening approach. Alex, you'll be surprised, man. I'm talking about they want Botox here, they want lipo there, they want at 45, 50 years old. And to me, it's sad based on you already got dudes knocking down your door already. You already juggling dudes. You already got a excessive amount of, if they the ones that's not married, a excessive amount of men in your life. What do you need the extra for if you definitely don't have a problem, with men? You know what I mean? So I know one of my homegirls, man, she got cakes out of this world. She wants some more, Alex. And these are real. Hers, girls are paying for this every day.
These girls are crazy, man.
And she got it, and talking about she wants some more.
They're crazy.
You know what I mean? So
these women have such low self-esteem issues.
Self-esteem.
It's incredible. I remember when I was dating, before I got married, and I was dating women, and I wasn't sure who I was going to marry and who I was going to be with, but I had this one girl that I thought was beautiful. She had an incredible body. Mm-hmm. She had small titties, but everything else, I mean, I don't want to say everything else was perfect, because small titties could be perfect.
Right.
It all depends on what you like.
Yeah.
But I remember she said one day, I'm going to go get a tit job because I want to balance out my body. Mm-hmm. And when she said that, I was done. Because I didn't want a woman that felt like she needed to alter her body to look better.
Well, the one thing I didn't have a problem with, Alex, was the boob job. Didn't have a problem with that at all.
Why is that?
I just didn't. I mean, it was a preference for people, maybe if they,
There's a lot of people that die getting
females
getting
with
boob jobs too.
Yeah, but it's a lot of people who didn't. You know what I mean? And I think the boob job was one of the kind of more successful surgeries that women were having. Some ran into problems. Believe me, some were busting inside of them, and had to go in for emergency surgery and things like that. But I didn't mind the boob job. You know what I mean? Problem is, once they get one surgery, they want more. It's not enough. Now they want the tummy tuck. Now they want the this. Now they want the Brazilian butt lift. Now you're not even you anymore. You know what I mean? And we see this on TV and some of these celebrities, all the time, And some people start off with just getting the crow's feet Botox. Then next thing you know, the lips. It don't stop. Now you don't even look like yourself no more. And the one person who I could truly say broke my heart, who I wish she would have never touched herself. To me, she was perfect just based on because she was herself, and that's Lil' Kim.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Vivica Fox.
Yeah. Oh no, Lil' Kim, man.
She jacked her face up.
Yeah. But that I ain't gonna lie, that hurted me. You know what I mean? Just based on you was perfect in this. Well, you didn't have a problem. You know what I mean? So I those surgeries, man, and they still going to get them though, Alex.
Yeah, well, I think regardless of what you're getting, if it's a butt job or a tit job, you still have low self-esteem issues.
Oh, I believe
in
that
my
too.
view.
Yeah, you have to at some point. You know what I mean? You have to. And it just I just believe that like you say the boob jobs is just something that maybe it started off first with that. I don't know, and I got comfortable with it, but all the rest of the stuff, more ass, more smaller waist. I heard women even went to the point to take a rib out to slim they waist down and shit. I heard all kind of shit.
Yeah, I think the rumor was Janet Jackson that did that.
Okay, I know I had heard it, but my point is, yeah, man, and even what we talking about not gonna stop them,
Now, for example, this doctor, his name is Hector Cabral.
Mm-hmm.
What would make a woman go to a doctor who had at least 5 other women died as a result of his surgeries? It was already well known. He was indicted by New York. He was able to escape prison time with some fines. Mm-hmm. What would make anyone even want to go to a doctor like that? The only thing I can think of is to save money. Like, why go to this already proven failure of a doctor?
Proven failure.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's like it's like a dude going to the weed dispensary or something. 5 people done died from buying this weed right here. You still gonna go? And I don't know, because I know she knew the results. He was unlicensed. He had already been. You can Google him and see that he was already charged in I think it was 2011 or something. And you could read this stuff online. You have Google. Maybe one of her friends went and had a successful one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, see, that's what I'll be thinking. Maybe 2 people that went to him and they were successful, because I know women personally that have flew over to different places to get different parts of their bodies altered, and it's the things that they had to go through was crazy.
Yeah, man, it's I guess it's a big moneymaker for these doctors, but I was also reading that what's her name, Cardi B, almost got work done by this same doctor.
Oh, damn.
But she had decided, she in this article I read, she had stated that she didn't get good vibes from him and decided not to. But I don't think anyone at this point should ever go to this doctor.
Man, but I'm wondering why they not investigate the situation.
Well, he's in the Dominican Republic, so it has to be a collaborative effort between the U.S. government and the Dominican Republic, and I'm sure that's why he was there, because he knew he couldn't practice here.
Yeah.
But I got this crazy this doctor, I guess a plastic surgery doctor story. One time, this dude was selling me a laptop, and I said, all right, I'll buy it off you. I bought it a couple $100. And once I got into the laptop, I noticed it belonged to a doctor.
Yeah.
I was like, man, it's all this patient information, spreadsheets. And then I saw the doctor's name. His name was Dr. Kevin Calhoun. So I was like, man, this is important, man. I'm gonna call this doctor up and take him his laptop. So I hit him up. I looked up his name, and I met him at the Target on La Cienega and Rodeo, which is now Obama. And I gave him the laptop, and he was just like, man, I'm just so thankful that you was able to return this. He said, how did you get this? I said, oh, some youngsters sold it to me. And I basically told them they broke into your car.
Yeah, pretty
they
much.
stole your shit, and then they sold it to me. But when I saw how important that the information was, I said, I got to return it. So he offered me some money, and I was like, nah, it's good. He said, how much did you pay for it? I said, I paid a couple $100, and I didn't even take any money from him. I didn't, and then he gives me his card. He said, you got a wife? I said, yeah. He said, any plastic surgery she needs on the house. So I gave the card to my wife, but she never hit the dude up. But that's my crazy plastic surgery. And then lastly, one time I had a girlfriend back in the day, and I didn't know she had breast implants. Didn't know. And then one day we're doing our thing, and I realized you got fake titties.
Yeah.
And it actually turned me off.
Right.
Because you don't know how hard to touch them, how to grab them. It feels so synthetic.
I was gonna say it didn't feel the same.
Nah, it didn't feel the same.
So if she wouldn't have told you, would have knew?
I would have not known when in her clothes, because she didn't have them huge.
No, I'm saying after her, with her clothes off.
As soon as she took her clothes off, I could tell.
Oh, okay.
It just looked too perfect.
Right.
Too cylindrical.
Right.
Too, the symmetry was just flawless. And then once you touch them, you can feel. And it just it was a turnoff for me. I just didn't enjoy it, and I never have. But I do understand that women who go through breast cancer and they lose their tits because of radiation, I can understand them doing it. But I feel like if God blessed you with a B cup, keep a B cup. There's women with C cups that want D cups.
No doubt, but let's be in all fairness. There's men's out here having surgery on things too. You know what I mean? I heard guys out here getting fake pecs and you know what I mean, all kind of shit too.
Terrible,
we can't just
man.
put it on the women, man. There's guys out here that's altering their bodies, you know what I mean, to make them seem more lean or they physique a little more better. And so, we can't just put it off on them, Alex, but at the end of the day, me personally, what happens for the woman who had a child and her stomach got stretched out and she got that flabby skin right there? See, for her to go get a tummy tuck, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? And because they do have the technology to do that. Wouldn't go over here to the Dominican Republic and this guy, but they do have plastic surgeons, in the state that do a damn good job. May be expensive, but they do a damn good job.
Well, it's always risky too, because I had a friend's mom that died from I believe it was a tummy tuck, and her last name was Cotton. I forget her first name. This was like maybe a decade ago. So man, this has been happening for a long time. People have been dying under these surgeries.
Now, was this what Kanye mom?
No, not.
It was something different.
This was before Kanye's
No, I'm saying,
mom.
but did she wasn't having no kind of surgery, was she?
I don't recall how Kanye's
okay,
mom.
okay.
No, but I had a friend. Her mom died in one of these surgeries, and it's just crazy. This woman, by the way, her name is Tandra, the woman that passed, Tandra Bowser Williams, and I also put a little blame on her husband, because there's no way I would let my wife go to a foreign country,
right, no doubt,
and have surgery by a doctor who's had already 5 or 6 people die under his care.
No doubt.
I'm just not gonna let it happen.
No doubt. You know what I mean? But she convinced him that, baby, you're gonna love it, and you know
did
what I
say
mean.
that.
And and he went for it. He thought about it, but like you say, there's no way my wife going to the Dominican Republic, man, or anywhere out the country for that matter. I'm not into the like you say, the fake thing. I do want to feel a fake ass though, just to see what.
That's what the strip clubs are for.
Yeah, well, I don't frequent them, so I guess you're right, but I just want to see what one feel like, do it feel regular, you know what I mean? But they going out there getting them, man, and like you say, with the butt implants, we've seen some awful ones too, like online and Instagram and all that stuff. Oh, I've seen some people been in some bad
I think they're all awful because you're not getting a thigh job, so your thigh is staying the same size.
I seen a meme on Instagram. Do the thigh cost more, or you know what I mean? Don't match, you know.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get a hamstring job and a thigh job to make that big butt look in proportion. Because I've seen some skinny legs on these huge butts.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Like Kim Kardashian. Yeah. If you look at Kim Kardashian, her butt is just way too huge for her legs.
For her legs, yeah.
And I don't know who's telling these women that this looks cute.
Yeah. Oh, somebody telling them that. Believe me. Somebody telling them you fine as fine.
Well, of course, everybody's saying
right. No doubt.
But we bullshitting y'all.
No, you bullshitting y'all.
You know, that's why guys go to the strip club. They don't, So I'm surprised Kanye, there's a song, Kanye Should Have Never Married Her by Glasses Malone.
Oh, that's crazy. I haven't heard that.
Yeah. Final thoughts on this woman that died in the Dominican Republic, man. She died of a massive stroke. Despite knowing this doctor's terrible record.
80% her fault, 20% her husband's fault. They were wrong all the way around for not doing the research on something that's serious. And I can't blame the doctor based on your record is out there. We could see your record, They didn't either do their homework all the way, but even him letting her go over there by herself. He should have went with her, even if, he should have went with her over there, but he shouldn't have let her go do it anyway, But when you talk about now you talking about controlling a woman, and here you go with the domestic violence, trying to tell somebody what they can and can't do. But I believe it's 80% her fault, 20% her husband's fault.
Yeah, my mom would call that domestic violence if I prevented my wife from going to the Dominican Republic and getting surgery from a doctor who has proven himself a failure. I'm just kidding. I'm sure she might give me an exception for that one.
Yeah, no doubt.
But I'm just surprised that this doctor's not in prison. I'm surprised that he was able to wiggle his way out of a jail sentence the last time he was indicted. And I believe there's going to be some lawsuits against any place that has employed this doctor or where this doctor has worked in the United States. I don't know how easy it is to sue in the Dominican Republic, but this should be the end of his career.
It should be, man. He shouldn't have another surgery be able to come through across his table. And then he turned around and I guess in his mind, he say, okay, well, let me pay for her body to get embalmed. Let me pay for her to, her afterlife funeral situation. Bro, that's not enough. That's not enough, And but she do have to be held responsible at some point too.
All right. We didn't hear from Spider Loke. I know he was very he was determined to make his case for T.I., and for whatever reason we weren't able to tap in with him. We'll tap in with Spider Loke next week to get his take on the whole T.I. situation. And that wraps up.
Right before we go, sure. Any new Eric Holder news?
No, Eric Holder. Oh yeah, I can't believe I forgot all about Eric Holder. It's just a jury selection right now.
Okay.
And the judge has been letting them out early. I think there was a couple motions filed. I was thinking of going to the court today, but
not much going on.
Not much going on. So opening statements, hopefully, we might not get to opening statements by the end of the week. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. And that looks like maybe early next week. But nothing except for picking the jury in the Eric Holder case, and that's about it. And I guess that'll wrap up another fire episode of Streets and Scholars. F General 1, if you're trying to tap in with FG on Instagram, FG Unleashed, to check him out on his latest videos. I'm at Alex Alonso 101 on all social media platforms. Hey, hit us up on Apple. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple, definitely leave us a comment and a review. And again, another fire episode of Streets and Scholars.